Please let's pay attention to this video and watch it to the end. I want you to see how the Nigerian government are labeling the Biafrans in the international community, what they're accusing the Biafra for. And often of time, they have refused to accept there is a Christian genocide in Nigeria. Please pay attention, and of course, if this is your first time coming across our channel, do us a favor by clicking on your subscribe button.
Are running amok in Nigeria. They're terrorizing moderate Muslims, they're terrorizing Christians, and they are targeting Christians. That cannot be disputed. And while we see many people trying to emphasize the outside issues, lifestyle, who owns land, who is the herder, etc., they want to emphasize that those are the key drivers, and that they're the key drivers of everything but religion. And I and many others, and I'm not just talking about those of us on this committee or Americans, I'm talking about religious leaders in Nigeria, believe religion is one of, if not the main driver of targeted violence right now. We just heard from Bishop Nnamdi. A week and a half ago, I talked to President Magaji. President Magaji is the president of my own, he's the Nigerian president of my own faith sect, the Christian Reformed Church. We have 400,000, mostly from a Dutch background, 400,000 participants and members here in North America between the United States and Canada. We have 500,000 in Nigeria. We are essentially an African church that happens to be headquartered in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I want to ask this question, because this seems to be sort of part of the central argument. Well, this isn't necessary. Well, certainly the Trump administration believed it was necessary the first go around. And I want to ask this question. Did things improve when the Biden administration removed the CPC?
Thank you for your question, Representative Hyde.
And just for the record, I'm seeing a number of heads shaking no in the right behind you. And these are people that may have a little better information than what the American media is, and they're all nodding their head right now. So go ahead.
Thank you for your question, Representative Hyzenga. As you mentioned, violence has increased over the last several years. It was unfortunate that the Biden administration chose to remove Nigeria as a CPC in 2021 and 2022 and 2023.
Please, before we continue with the video, do us a favor by clicking on your subscribe button.
And President Trump's bold action to redesignate them is a wake-up call to the Nigerian government. And as you mentioned, religion is extremist religious ideology is, of course, a primary motivator of these attacks. The attackers themselves use religious language. They target churches. They target Christians on holidays.
Yeah, and absolutely. It was Christmas Eve of 2023 when 200 people were murdered, killed in a church. Now, I want to ask this. So one question was, did things improve? I think the answer is no on that. Here's the question. Proportionally, do we see Christians killing Muslims in Christian areas of Nigeria the way that we are seeing radicalized Islamists killing Christians in Muslim areas of Nigeria?
What I can tell you, Representative Hyzenga, is that Christians are disproportionately targeted based on their population.
Exactly. And by the way, for those that you can't pick up with the microphones, there's audible yeses behind you. Again, the people that are watching who are nodding their heads. Why? Because they have lived this. Their families have lived this. I went to school with kids from Nigeria. I've got neighbors who've been missionaries there, who have family there, who have friends there, who know this is going on. Yet we've got not just the mass media, we got people within Congress denying that this is happening, or certainly de-emphasizing it. It ought to be outrageous that it is Christians, moderate Muslims, anyone being terrorized by these radicalized Islamists in Nigeria, and we've got the Tinubu government sitting back and not doing enough.
Please, before we continue with the video, do us a favor by clicking on your subscribe button.
I recently just was interviewed by Nigerian television, Arise TV. And that was really their question. Is the Tinubu government doing enough? And I had to answer, no, they are not. And I do not understand how a delegation can come here to the United States and downplay and come up with all of these other excuses as to why this is allowed to happen. It should be rejected and should be called out for what it is.
Also about Nigeria. The government there has said that Christians are not endangered, but others say there are massacres and acts of persecution. Are Christians safe in Nigeria? And separately, what are you thinking ahead of your conversation with American youth for the National Catholic Youth Conference?
I'll answer the first question. I think in Nigeria, in certain areas, there is certainly a danger for Christians, but for all people, Christians and Muslims have been slaughtered. There's a question of terrorism. There's a question of that has to do a lot with economics, if you will, and control of the lands that they have. Unfortunately, many Christians have died, and I think it's very important to seek a way to government with all peoples to promote authentic religious freedom, respect for all people.
Chair recognizes Mr. Huizenga.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, and I'm going to deviate a little bit from my written remarks, much to the chagrin of my staff, but I feel it needs to be addressed right from the very beginning. The simple fact is radicalized Islamists are running amok in Nigeria. They're terrorizing moderate Muslims, they're terrorizing Christians, and they are targeting Christians. That cannot be disputed. And while we see many people trying to emphasize the outside issues, lifestyle, who owns land, who is the herder, etc., etc.
Please, before we continue with the video, do us a favor by clicking on your subscribe button.
I want to emphasize that those are the key drivers, and that they're the key drivers of everything but religion. And I and many others, and I'm not just talking about those of us on this committee or Americans, I'm talking about religious leaders in Nigeria, believe religion is one of, if not the main driver of targeting.
In Nigeria, the ongoing slaughter of thousands of Christians by various ethnic militias in the Middle Belt, as well as terrorist groups like Boko Haram and ISIS West Africa in the north, is both tragic and unacceptable. The mass abduction of students and teachers from religious schools in Nigeria is nothing short of barbaric. As President Trump has made clear, we cannot and will not stand by while such atrocities occur on a regular basis and without consequence. That is why the United States is taking decisive action under a new policy that will allow...
Nigeria is facing one of the gravest religious freedom crises in the world. As the former chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee on Africa, I have visited and have seen firsthand the direness of the conditions in what is now the deadliest place on earth to be a Christian. They are targeted, displaced, and killed simply for their faith. The ancient plea, "Is there no help for the widow's son?" still echoes today. Since 2019, nearly 17,000 Christians have been killed. In the first 7 months of this year alone, hundreds more were murdered. On June 13th, during the Yelawada massacre, more than 280 Christians were slaughtered in a single day. These are not isolated tragedies, but a sustained pattern of religiously motivated violence, often ignored or even enabled by the Nigerian government. Extremist groups like Boko Haram, Fulani militants, and ISIS West Africa attack often without any meaningful intervention from authorities. The lack of response has created an atmosphere of impunity where Christians continue to live in constant threat and fear. The United States has previously recognized this crisis. President Trump not only designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern during his first term, but redesignated it again in his second term after President Biden inexplicably removed that designation. Religious persecution is tied to political repression and weakening institutions in Nigeria. Example, the detention of Nnamdi Kanu is a clear example. In 2022, Nigeria's Court of Appeal struck down the charges against him and ordered his release. The UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has also called for his unconditional release. Yet he remains in solitary confinement, in deteriorating health, and recently had to represent himself in court. Nigeria has signaled that the law is optional and targeting Christians is fair game. Just hours ago this morning, despite the pleas and cries of the Nigerian people and many Nigerian lawmakers, Nnamdi Kanu was convicted on all charges. For fiscal year 2025, the U.S. has requested nearly $8 billion for sub-Saharan Africa. But when Americans see political prisoners, judicial defiance, and the slaughter of Christians, they understandably ask as they meet their own struggles, why should our tax dollars support governments that refuse to protect their own people? Is our aid aiding a genocide? Nigeria is a nation of tremendous potential, but that potential is being choked out by violent persecution of its Christian population. No country can build a stable future where churches are burned, believers are killed, and communities live in fear. The United States must stay engaged, and Nigeria must change course now.
Today, like I said before, this is how the Nigerian government are labeling the Biafrans in the public. Yeah, this is how they showcase the indigenous people, to the world. They label these people as people who doesn't know their left from their right. Or most of especially, they have already often on denying the genocide, the Christian genocide that is happening in the country. They have failed to admit that the Tinubu administration have allowed the Fulani Janjaweed, the Sokoto Caliphate, to enter into Nigeria and slaughtered not only just the Muslims, even the Christians in their numbers. Then if you go to Benue, there is a high rate number, and the one that even happened of recent in December here, nobody has ever talked about it. And the Nigerian state government have never even bring those who did such, to book, or even, give us evidence or their effort of what they have done so far. That's because they actually know what they are doing and they are all involvement in it. Especially, let's take for an instance what is happening in Oyo State. The children that have been adopted, nobody has ever given us news ever since then that this is the account of them. They have returned back to their family or they are still in captive. That issue has slowly died away. That is how they want to control the narrative when it comes to the insecurity happening in Nigeria. And most times they keep saying that it's Biafra that causing the insecurity happening in Nigeria. So they first of all label Nnamdi Kanu as a terrorist. After they have captured him and illegally extradite him to Nigeria, or what other people might say that they have kidnapped him. They kidnapped him back to Nigeria. Then the terrorists keep continuing. And yet, they keep saying, no, he's the second in command for Simon Eba. And Nigerian government went to Finland and make so many claims. And finally, he's been sentenced. And yet, the insecurity keep happening. Almost happening every part of Nigerian territory. And especially in the northern region, which they can never accuse Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Eba. And the question still remains, who are those doing it? And unfortunately for them, and they are jealous about the Southeast, because the Southeast still remains the most peaceful and unshaken region among where all these insecurities is happening. And we keep asking the same question: who are those sponsoring the attack? And that's why you could see someone like Pastor A.E. Adiboye coming out to say rubbish after he have already criticized Goodluck Jonathan during his regime, and he's now coming out to say that Tinubu is doing his enough. And sorry to those men of God that say that it is bad to criticize a man of God. No, this time we are not criticizing, but we will not say that because you feel like you are anointed, then you should not be called out. If them can call out a native doctor, that means it's high time that we call out everybody. As long as you have partake in injustice, it means that you are not worthy. Yes, you are not worthy. Assuming he make that assumption and remain over that place, he could have been fine. But coming out to defend President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in his incompetency, that shows how hypocrite and tribalistic he can be. So, my Christian brothers, if you feel annoyed for calling out Pastor Adiboye in this, I'm sorry, but at the time we have to state the fact if we are not being religious fanatic. Well, share your own opinion in the comment section and don't forget to share this video to all your social media platforms. Do us a favor by clicking on your subscribe button if this is your first time coming across my channel. Thank you and God bless.